Let the scriptures speak for themselves.
Cool. So I'd love to dive into 1 Thessalonians chapter 4.
Let's see.
And then there's one more verse. You're going to have to help me out. I don't know where it's at, but there's another, I think, section. I think it's 1 Corinthians that speaks to people usually reference for the rapture.
I think I was looking for it earlier, and I knew there was two, but I was having trouble finding.
I
found the First Thessalonian ones, but
well, that's okay. I mean, we could just talk through 1 Thessalonians 4. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Maybe I could see if I can find that other one.
Yeah, so 1 Thessalonians 4, verses, let's see.
Like 13.
13 following to 18, it looks like. We have to understand, again, its context is important. So This is a letter Paul wrote to the Thessalonican church, right? So these are Christians in the first century, in the midst of the trials and tribulation type stuff. They were getting persecuted, Romans this and Jews hated, all this stuff going on.
Yeah.
So in that context, they were getting upset because they didn't know if when the Lord was talking about coming back and the kingdom starting, if their dead loved ones were going to be taken. They were worried that their dead loved ones would not be with them after they died. Like they wouldn't see them again. This is truly what they were worried about. So verse 18 tells us, it says, wherefore comfort one another with these. They were looking for comfort.
Yeah, right.
For Paul, for the situations they were in, right? It wasn't just some random thing. This is what it was about. So he says, don't worry. He's like, don't worry.
Yeah.
Even those that sleep in Jesus, God will bring with him. Verse 14, right?
Yeah.
So he's telling them, your loved ones, your dad who died the other day, he's going to be there. It's going to be okay. So this is comforting for them. He says that we who are alive and remain until the coming that we've been telling you about will not go before those that are asleep. So at the coming, the asleep ones, the dead ones, were going to go. He was giving them this to comfort them. Don't worry, they're not going to stay in Hades. They're not going to be dead forever. They're going to go when this kingdom comes. And then in the verse 17, which is the one, verse 16 says, the Lord will descend from heaven, the voice of the archangel, the trump, the dead in Christ will rise first, just as he just told them. And then in verse 17 is where everyone gets hung up. Then we which are alive and remain will be caught up together, harpazo, with them in the clouds, right? So everyone who believes in a rapture sees this verse and says, that means that the people who are alive, he was telling them they're going to fly up there.
Yeah, right.
Well, we got to be careful. And this is where this is hard. And it's hard for me to tell other people because you really do need, I hate to say, a little Greek understanding goes a long way with this verse.
Yeah.
Number one, harpazo, caught up, doesn't mean rapture. It means just taken away.
Right.
It's ambiguous. It's not talking about, humans flying up in the sky. It just means you'd be taken, okay? Taken together. And the word that starts that verse, then, in English, we have a very immediate sense of that word. Like then, that means right after, boom, boom. That's what we always think. But that word in Greek, it really, if I had to translate it, I would translate it afterwards.
Right.
And sometimes they translate it hereafter, which I think would have been better in this case.
Yeah.
But that word, if you look it up and all the uses, it means everything from like a 1 day period to a dozens of years period.
Yeah.
It is functional in the language in regards to all those different time frames. So it generally is a very ambiguous word. It means afterwards, at some point, and the point at which you will be caught up together with them because they were resurrected is when you die and you are taken up. That's what it's talking about here. And why does that comfort? We have to, again, analyze it from the perspective of the context. Why does that comfort them? Because then they're going to be together with their loved ones.
Yeah, that's right.
They're going to be together with them. This is not telling them that if you're standing on the ground when Jesus comes in those clouds, zoop, you get to fly. No, sorry. It's not really it. And what is the one thing, by the way, this is another, and it's all about context.
Yeah, sure.
But I've read a ton of old Jewish writings,
Yeah.
rabbis and Talmud, Midrash, all this stuff. What is the thing that the Jews were always looking for, that where people would rise up? It was the resurrection. And that is a resurrection of the dead. It's not a resurrection of the living. You can't be resurrected if you're alive. This was the resurrection that the Jews had always talked about. And of course, the Jews, not accepting Christ, getting all bitter about the Messiah who wasn't going to give them an earthly kingdom and win the earth for them and take over the Roman Empire. They were bitter and they didn't like Christ and they didn't recognize this resurrection, but it was occurring. The Sadducees, by the way, you'll read about them, they denied a resurrection. And this was the event that the Jews were talking about for centuries.
Right. Yeah. And the Pharisees believed in it, so they would have been looking forward to that event.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think, like you said, context is so key. It's so common for so many of our beliefs. We find a single verse in the Bible that supports whatever in the world we're trying to prove, and then it's just, here it is,
Yeah,
we quote it like that's the end all be all.
Exactly. And to me, the hard part to talk to futurists about when they are pointing at this passage and yelling at me, see, there's the rapture right there. And I look at them and I say this, but they don't hear me.
Yeah.
I say, just think about, this is your best proof for a rapture, this verse right here, and your only proof. If you consider it a proof, does that tell you something? To me, that tells me something. If I have something that I think is true, but then I can only find one thing in one place that tells me that thing, then I really start to double down on whether I really understand what it's saying. I don't then question everything else and say, well, now my belief about this one thing is right because I found a verse. No. Yeah. You need to understand the verse and make sure. Most of the things that I believe, I try to source multiple times from multiple places. That's what gives me a confidence that what I'm saying is more right. Yeah,
that's right. No, and so many essential doctrines are repeated over and over. Salvation by grace through faith and the deity of Christ, things like this. I mean, you'll find it over and over and over and over. And like you're saying, a lot of our things that we create our own theologies from single verses, sometimes it's not anywhere else. And you get to looking at the context, read the chapter before and the chapter after, and it's like, I don't know if that's actually what he's talking about in that single verse, Yeah.
Again, it's that carefulness and that willingness to push yourself, to make sure. To me, I don't know how it happens with other people, but I have question marks that start popping up. And so I have to, if I haven't resolved all those question marks, each one individually, then I feel like I haven't fully vetted it. And so as long as I've got a question mark that I feel like is not satisfactorily vetted, I'm not going to tell someone I know for sure, on that.
That's the same way I teach. Yeah. I read through it and then I study through it until every nook and cranny, I feel like, I'm pretty sure that this is what this is talking about. And then I check it with the context before and after. And I think that's a good way to go about. But if you come with an agenda to the text, then things are going to say whatever you want them to say,
And it's hard. I mean,
people don't know they're bringing an
I've
agenda,
done that.
I mean,
we've done that so many times. It's hard to know.
Me too. Yeah.
You got to be real introspective to be able to know when you're doing that, And I think I'm pretty practiced at it, but I probably have blind spots too.
Sure.
Everybody does, but we just do the best we can and keep working at it. I think we're all working on the same things, just a matter of getting there.
Yeah. No, I think that's so important. Yeah, I think everyone does do this, and I think the fight for being a faithful Bible interpreter is, like you said, to keep asking questions, and not that we don't come to a conclusion eventually. I think we do, but just because someone somewhere or everyone in your generation says, well, this means that, I think it's helpful studying a little church history, or even just listening to others. Does a faithful Bible teacher that I know of, do any of them have a different view of this, and then hear it out, because not everyone should be weighed equally as Bible teachers, but, because sometimes and I'm sure you have guys that you would listen to or read that you say, well, both of these guys are faithful Bible teachers, interpreters, but they line up very differently on certain things. And then those are the guys you try to listen to both sides on that thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, for example, for this conversation, when I was studying John MacArthur's hardcore, clear predispensationalist, and then I look in his same camp, right, with someone like R.C. Sproul, and R.C. Sproul's like, well, clearly it doesn't mean, what everyone's saying it means,
Yeah.
So anyways, I think that's helpful.